kind of features of the syllabus, and then some of the specific things that I'm going to hope that you'll be able to do this semester or this. Okay, in this introduction presentation, I want to go over the course, kind of features of the syllabus, and then some of the specific things that I'm going to hope that you'll be able to do this semester or this 6-week module. I just want to remind you it's online asynchronous, which means we don't have weekly meetings. And if you want to talk to me, all you have to do is email me and we can schedule a Zoom. I am a professor here at Kingsborough. I've been teaching since 2010, and so I'm going to be approaching my 15th year at Kingsborough. My research is based on something called Rights Talk, or I'm very interested in how you all use the concept of rights and rules in your everyday life and how that compares to formal law, and I really like to look at the gap between those two things. And so this class will be a lot about looking at language and thinking about our common assumptions and different ways that we're experiencing the legal system or how you're thinking about rules in your everyday life. The best way to email me is at my Kingsborough account, which is jason.leggett@kbcc.cuny.edu. My teaching philosophy is based in 3 principles. One is I decenter myself as the only expert in the room, so I'm not trying to pass knowledge over to you or deposit information into you as if you were a robot or a blank piece of paper. Instead, I assume you already know things. Some of those might be misconceptions, some of them might be impartial, they might be partial or like pieces of knowledge. But what we're trying to do is have a conversation with one another and with me and the readings and try to build knowledge around those things. The second thing is I provide a critical space for us to not just look at the individual motives of people and not just say kind of silly things like everyone needs to get along or the judiciary is a perfect place and everything gets solved, but to be really critical and to think outside the box and look at the systemic issues that are kind of causing the behaviors of individuals. And then third, we're all going to work together. This is part of being civic engagement and democratic practice to try to think about ways that we might improve the system and try to reduce injustice. What I'll expect from you is you'll treat me and your peers with dignity and respect. What I mean by that is that you will be actively engaged in the readings and the annotations and the discussion boards, and that you won't unfairly or unnecessarily criticize one another in basically how you write or what you're talking about or the main points. Instead, you'll focus on trying to build a dialogue with one another and adding to each other's knowledge about the subjects. You'll be actively participating, which means I'm hoping that you'll be looking at our materials 3 or 4 days a week. I know that some of you will have to do most of the work 1 day a week. That's okay, but I want to see kind of active engagement, that you're kind of with us each week and that you're really thinking deeply about what your classmates are saying. And you'll keep an open line of communication with me so I know how to better support you, what you need, what kind of advice you need, as well as if you're going through anything where you require more time. I've also included an equity and inclusion statement in the syllabus that you can read. The main point is that the legal system is not neutral or fair or unbiased, that it's built into human biases, that we all have some things that we don't necessarily think about. And so as a Anglo-Saxon Protestant male, I benefit from a lot of systems that were built by and for what are called WASPs, but that also kind of give me privilege that is not something I necessarily earn. And so I want to try to make sure that I'm decentering that and that I'm making other points of view and other cultures ways of existing and thinking about things as part of how we're approaching our work. And that I'm not just biasing people who copy or mirror things that are similar to how I exist. And also kind of thinks about building on the scholarship of those, particularly people like Kimberly Crenshaw. I also use a lot of work from Charles Lawrence and Bell Hooks, and Patricia O'Collins, to really make sure that we're looking at race, gender, and class as one systemic bias, as opposed to seeing them as accidents or things that the legal system is actually supposed to fix, when in fact they are things that are created by and through the legal system. For grading, it's pretty straightforward. It's a points system that there's two ways of generating points plus extra credit. The first way is through these reading annotations. There's 8 readings that you annotate. They're each worth 10 points. You're going to do 10 annotations. You can't do all 10 annotations on the first page. You need to spread it out through the reading. And you need to respond to other students' posts, and you'll get full credit. That'll give you 80 points. The discussion boards are very similar, so there's 10 points each. To get full credit, you have to follow instructions, make sure you're using your own content and you're not copying from the internet or using AI, and that you respond to student posts thoughtfully and that you're engaging in a way that is adding to the conversation and not simply saying, I agree or good job, but actually helping us all learn something new. If you add up your points, right, you're going to want to try to get 160. Will get you an A+, and then you see the breakdown from there. In order to pass the class with a C, which is a transfer over to John Jay or another transfer college, you'll need at least 100 to 110 points, and anything below a 79 would be an F. There is going to be extra credit that will be available. I'll send that out in the announcements, and that will help you make up any things that you're missing or struggling with, and that'll be up to 30 points. If you look at our homepage on Brightspace, you'll notice I don't use all of the features. I only use the content section and the discussion board section, as well as announcements, which will be on the main page. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to just the content section and just the discussion board section. And if you look at the annotated readings, that's where all of the readings are, as well as the instructions on how to do the annotations, including a video. In the announcements is where you'll see I've kind of got, there's a class we're offering as the first class in the spring. That's for elective. It's an elective for criminal justice students, especially if you plan on going to John Jay. If you're interested in pre-law or interested in legal issues, you can take this class at Kingsborough and it automatically transfers to John Jay, so you don't have to take it there. The advantage is that if you take it at John Jay, you'll be a junior when most of the students in that class will be freshman or sophomore. So by taking it now, you're kind of going to John Jay at a junior level as opposed to being in a classroom with people who are much younger and just starting out. The other side of you'll see in the discussion board, we'll have each of these discussions, and you'll try to engage in those by the due dates. I didn't add the dates here, I just realized, so I'll add the dates as well in the discussion board post to kind of help you keep track. It is in the syllabus, but I know it's easier if I put it there as well, so I'll do that after I finish this presentation. The annotated readings, again, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but if you get behind, you can always make them up so they don't open and close at a specific time. But the readings are linked up to the discussion boards, and so you want to do the reading and then do the discussion board. And you'll see that there are instructions here that ask you to put a code. So for example, if you have a question about a part of the reading, you'll put a Q and then you ask your question. If part of the reading makes you angry, you'll put an A and then you'll say why it makes you angry. If you love the reading or you love something that was said in the reading, you'll put an L and you'll say what you love about it. And there's different codes. There's one for interesting, surprising. And if you want to do further research, or if you think this would be something you found while you were doing your research, you said, hey, I want to share this with the class, you put an R there and then you put the link, or you copy and paste the thing that you found. And that's how you'll go ahead and do the posts. Again, you need to do 10 of them per reading. So if you only do 6, you'll get 6 points as opposed to 10. Here's an example from a previous class. And so what you do is you click on the part of the text that you want to annotate. It'll pop up and either say annotate or highlight. You'll click annotate, and that's what creates the text over here. You'll put your code. This student put S for surprising, and then they said why they were surprising. Same with the other student. They both found it surprising, and so they wrote about it. If you push the part where it says highlight, I don't see that. That's just for you. So if you want to go through and highlight a bunch of stuff and then add your annotations, that's fine. But again, you don't get credit for the highlights, you get credit for the annotations. For the discussion boards, I just kind of wanted to give you a bit of a sense of what I'm looking for in the discussion board posts. There's 2 mistakes that students will make, and you won't get a very good grade. You'll get the chance to revise it, but some students make this mistake because they're used to a different class where you can copy things from the internet and the teacher's giving you credit for that. I'm not going to do that, so I want to give you a clear idea of what it is I'm asking you to do. So the first one is asking you to do a little bit of research, and so you're going to look at a different set of laws from the 1960s about the New York Criminal Code, and I'm really just seeing like how are you able to make sense of history in the present. So a lot of times students say things were better, things were worse in the 80s or the 70s. I want you to see like what's similar between these proposals in the 60s and how they kind of affect us today. The next set is going to ask you to look at your assumptions about the role of judges. Like 100% of students that I've taught over the last 15 years all think judges are neutral, even though when we start talking, they know that humans aren't neutral. And so you kind of like have this contradiction. And so I want you to see where a judge made an error. And it's something that isn't really talked about a lot. And so I want you to think about like how does that error influence kind of this whole system that we have, because judicial review was not something that existed in the Constitution, and it didn't exist in the minds of those people at that time. It was something that really John Marshall created, again, by making a mistake. And so the mistake kind of created this thing that we all kind of like take for granted. And so if you get a court case, whether it's related to abortion or gun rights or free speech, you say, well, I don't like the way judges, interpreted the law. Well, it all started with this mistake from Judge Marshall. So I want to kind of see how do you make sense of that, and how do you tackle this assumption you had about judges being neutral. The next one goes a little bit further into that, where again you go not to the individual motives, but where you see how societal or political injustice and gender discrimination actually affects female judges. And so I want you to be able to conduct college level research and apply that. Specifically here, you're going to use statistics to try to show or to support your argument or show that you understand how systemic gender injustice works, as opposed to just individuals who sometimes are biased. The next one looks again at your assumptions about fairness in the liberal system, by having an argument, a debate between two people as they're talking about liberalism and communism. And you want to think about like what would these systems look like, or what would an other system look like. So this one's asking you to use critical thinking, challenge your own assumptions, reflectiveness, but then also to kind of imagine other scenarios. The next one goes into now whether you can apply all this kind of critical thinking and reflective thinking that you've done. Can you apply it to a specific role in the court? And we're going to use the example of the prosecutor and how prosecutors think about the job of the prosecutor. And then I'm going to kind of end here. By the end of the 6 weeks, we'll then have you build this new knowledge and start thinking about this concept called pluralism. There's democratic pluralism, and then there's legal pluralism, and they both kind of are similar, but there are some differences. And so I don't want you to be like experts on that. I just want you to start thinking about it and raising some questions. So can you just demonstrate an understanding of it? Like you're starting to get clearer about it because you're able to apply the course concepts and the course readings when you're doing this particular post. And then finally, the final exam is just kind of building up on that and say, how do you reflect on your own consciousness, the assumptions you had, the kind of mistakes that people make about the legal system, this idea of systemic bias, pluralism, how do you make sense of all of these things? And are you able to kind of formulate what we would call college level inquiry or research skills at this point? And so again, I'm not going to be super harsh on that. It's just, are you able to kind of do that kind of work? Are you growing? Are you improving? That's how the discussion board is working. And so I think you should be able to see now, if you've been listening, why copying and pasting answers from the internet or using AI wouldn't work here, because it's really particular to you and the other students and their comments. And so, right, I'm not looking for generic answers. I'm looking for very specific answers that have to do with you. You should talk about your understanding of the readings. You should talk about your lived experience, and you should be able to reference those readings and the student comments and be in a dialogue with one another. This might be surprising to some students that I accept late work. My motto, my policy is that I always accept student work. I think it's a sound policy. It's worked for me for 15 years. There are some things that have to be completed by a due date, but it probably won't come up in this class. But, I might give a quiz or something depending on how your students are doing. But, most of the time I can be flexible with you as long as you communicate with me. What I can't do is if you show up on the last week and you go, oh, I'm going to try to get the whole class done in a week, I mean, in theory, it's possible. I've never seen it done. Students have tried, and then they, email me saying, "Oh, they tried, but they couldn't do it." So it's a bad idea. So if you're struggling that much, and it's like the third week, you really should be emailing me, and we should be talking to each other. I probably will have emailed you by that point, but you'd be surprised how many people don't respond. The kind of lesson here is don't suffer in silence. There's usually something I can do to help you, but only if we talk to one another. There are two deadlines I have to follow because there are CUNY rules. One is if you don't do anything in the first 10 days, I'm supposed to drop you immediately. This is called a VOE roster. And so, you have to do the first discussion board at the very least, and the first reading, really. But if you're struggling and you're not able to figure it out, right, again, don't be silent. Email me and we can work something out. And then at least I've heard from you and I won't drop you. But if I don't hear anything from you and you haven't done those assignments, then I have to drop you. The other one is that if you're not, this is a weird rule, but it's like if you're not actively engaged in the course for 6 weeks, then I'm supposed to give you a WU. It's a administrative withdrawal. And so this is maybe you did one assignment or maybe you did even 2 assignments, but you didn't do anything for 3 weeks, and then you emailed me, but you didn't do anything else. Then I have to give you a WU. And so you want to just basically be emailing me and trying to keep up with the work. Otherwise, I have to follow these rules. I don't want to talk too much about this plagiarism. I've already said it. Basically, you're not supposed to be using AI. You're not supposed to be copying and pasting the internet. My policy is basically I'm going to give you a 0 for that work because it wasn't your work. I don't want you to think you can't use AI at all. I use AI. I'm really good at using AI, and I kind of understand the algorithms behind it and how to ask good prompts. If you want to know more, we can talk about it. It is good when you're starting to do your research, or if you're kind of wondering how do 2 or 3 things relate, it is good to kind of point you in the right direction. The problem is when you use that for an answer, the answers usually aren't very good because basically AI doesn't know what you know related to the course. If there was some way for it to know everything about the course, the answers would be a lot better. And so it's usually just so obvious because they're really not very well related to the readings and the topics. So again, it's okay to use AI. If you want to talk to me about using it, well, we can talk about that. But again, if it's obviously not related to the course content or the readings, I can't give you credit for the answers. I'm supposed to report you if it starts to become a problem. I will report you if it becomes a problem, but hopefully, right, if you don't get the points, you'll realize, you need to try a different strategy, or you've talked to me and we figure out a way to avoid plagiarism. I want to just kind of go a little detail about the course schedule for a second. You'll find it in the syllabus, but I just wanted you to see, I've broken it down into green and red, but the point being is you're annotating readings and you're responding to other students, and then you're in dialogue with those same students about the course. So we're starting that way with just the syllabus and just what are your expectations about the courts and judges. Then I'm going to build on that by looking at criminal law, and you're going to be dialoguing with one another about that. And then we're going to build on that with judicial review, and you're going to be dialogue with one another, but now you're starting to add critical thinking. And by that point, the third week, you should be starting to use that critical thinking pretty well. And then by the fourth, you're able to use that critical thinking and now see multiple points of view, and you're going to be able to bring in statistics. And so you're using reasoning to support your opinions, and you're in that dialogue with one another. So you kind of see how it's building up. And then in the kind of last section of the course, you're going to be continuing that reflective process to kind of look at these big abstract concepts of liberalism, communism, other, and how that relates to the work you've done so far. Then I put a little polygon here, blue polygon, because the next one is almost like a trick in a way. It's not meant to be. At this point, you should be able to then apply all of the things that you've learned in your critical thinking on a specific role within the court. So this is the application part of the court. But sometimes students revert back and it's as if you didn't learn anything for those first 5 weeks. and you say something like, the prosecutor's neutral, and you go, so it's like you forgot all the stuff we just talked about. So this is where dialoguing with other students is really helpful, because the other students aren't going to let you do that, and you're going to be able to be in a conversation with them, and you're kind of all at the same point, and you're going to be talking about, oh, I see why this works here, or why the prosecutor is biased against women in this place, or why African Americans are sentenced, harsher, is because of these dynamics that we've seen in liberalism. Right? You're going to be able to build off of that. So I just put a polygon there just to remind you, like, this is a kind of a trap in some ways. Like, sometimes people fall back. You want to keep pushing forward. And then the last week is you're going to be thinking really specifically about stories about law and your own consciousness, and how that really kind of involves everything we've talked about, and you're really reflecting on the course concepts and the readings very specifically. And so when you're dialoguing with each other, you really should be building new knowledge at that point. You should be saying, here are new things I've learned and things I'd add to the course, and hopefully I'd be able to learn from you as well. So with that, I'll say good luck. I think this is a pretty straightforward way to finish the course. If you're having any issues, or if you have any questions or comments, absolutely email me, or if you need to talk to me, we can do a Zoom. Otherwise, good luck, and I will hopefully see your responses soon.